Colleagues, let's start the work of our expert panel. My name is Klimanov Vladimir, Head of Chair, State Regulation and Economy, RANEPA of Russia, and I will speak as a co-moderator of today's expert discussion about inter-budgetary relations and differentiation of powers, mid-term challenges. We will moderate the discussion together with Sergey Ryabukhin, Chairman of the Budget Committee and Financial Markets of the Council of Federations, and I will introduce right away our quite powerful, as it seems to me, for our expert discussion, our group of speakers and panelists. Here in the Presidium, we have Larisa Yeroshkina. She's Director of Department Inter-budgetary Relations of Ministry of Finance. Yuri Roslyak, Auditor, Audit Chamber. Mr. Karlin, Governor of Altai region. And Maxim Reshetnikov, Minister of the Government of Moscow, Head of Department of Economic Policy and Development. Besides, in the first row, we have quite a big representative group of experts, both from expert organizations and the regions. They will be involved in the discussion too, and we plan to conduct discussion as a free discussion, as a free and open discussion. At the beginning, we will give the floor to the main speakers, and then some additional comments from the expert community and some representatives of the regions. And then after, we hope very much that we will enough time Friday evening, 13th for Q&A from the audience. So I suggest conducting this as a very live and active or interactive discussion. So again, very happy to see you here. Welcome, and we'll give the floor to my co-moderator, Sergey Ryabukhin. Thank you very much, and good evening. Well, actually, I do support this kind of option of open discussion, both as yesterday, well, the day was very busy and a lot of different things, many vectors of discussions, and we even have already a trend in place and understanding of what should be selected as priorities, because the main agenda of the forum, to remind us, is Russia, a priority of discussion, of development, and in the context of this main topic, it's inter-budgetary relations, looking for two different options or instruments and approaches. I think that very briefly I will share with you three main topics or subjects that might be of interest today to discuss, and maybe hear the views of the experts and the regions, and mostly the positions of the Ministry of Finance. And I'm sure Larisa will agree with me. So this first subject that I'm suggesting for discussion, it sort of matches the results of a similar panel discussion we had a year ago, last December. It was not Friday, it was Wednesday. We were more active and there were more people present. So first is this motivation and stimulus of development, sustainability of the budget system of Russian Federation. Well, nothing very much to comment or trying to convince someone, because actually that's, I would say, a hyper-differentiated situation in the regions. Out of 85 territories, 10 covering more than a half domestic regional product, and we have 14 of them with so much leverage and so many debts, as many as revenues, as much as revenues. So we have to find the motivation, the points of growth in this second part. So the second thing to remind you, and maybe suggest also as an independent subject for discussion, a preliminary result of inventory, and we discussed very thoroughly last year. about the all budget system and what Minfin had done in response to the request of the Council of Federation. And Yuri Vitalovich also supported us very much, and he was involved during the whole year in all this expert work with the Ministry of Finance. And we actually, according to the according to spending, we do have an objective picture of how spending looks for all those things. And I think that not only Minfin, but Yuri also will share some details about the results of the inventory, or maybe some even proposals already in place. My view is that we should not stop the inventory at that, because we have done very fundamental work and we have to complete it. And it would be great to have the second stage of inventory of sources of all the 4 levels. And it would be magnificent if we, in our budget legislation, would introduce a norm of mandatory register, public register of budget commitments on all levels, with all the spending, expenses, and revenues. From the point of view of even elementary logic and transparency of setting up the budget, inter-budgetary relationship. And this third subject for discussion, which is quite a burning issue in my perspective, is the instrument of budget policy, 11 priorities or projects from the point of view of project financing. It is very important, and I would like to draw your attention that among those 11 projects, there are some linked to the development of economic and taxation potential of the territories of Russian Federation. And it would be great to find those mechanisms and instruments to link the federal and regional programs, industrial target programs to all those projects to achieve better results, adding up all those areas of work. And I think this is also one of the priority of the budget and financial policy for the coming, for the horizon of 3 years. So those are the suggestions to discuss from my perspective. Thank you. Excellent. What I suggest to do is, in the framework of those 3, or maybe not only 3, to start our discussion as usual, from the position that representative of the Ministry of Finance would expound. Larisa, you're welcome. So the challenges for midterm, in 2017 already, I think, in the inter-budgetary relations, a lot is changing already. Let's discuss and understand where we're going and what will happen or start already happening as of 2017. Thank you very much. Good evening, dear participants of discussion. On the eve of the old new year, it would be great to think of something for it to come true. Well, our wishes are all linked to the budget of the Russian Federation and inter-budgetary relationship from the point where we are and what we are to do. So it will always be there. Every year, every period of the budget, it would be a burning issue, and we will always discuss it and face it. Well, I would like to start with the following. We now have preliminary results of performance of 2016. And you know, the Ministry of Finance was very happy at the performance of the territories. To quote some numbers for you to understand, revenues increased 6%, total revenues of all the territories of Russian Federation. We had expected about 3% only, the growth rate by 2015. Tax and non-tax plus 8. Our forecast was 6. 77 territories, positive dynamics of their budget obligations, and 8 with negative. Mostly, those are the territories whose budgets depend on the revenues related to natural resources production. Profit plus 8%. Our expectation was to have only actuals of 2015. Physical persons income plus 7%, which matched our forecast. And what really made us happy was that the revenues were higher than the spending. So the historical deficit is minimum in the recent 5 years, at least 57 billion rubles. To remind you three numbers, in 2013 it was 642 billion. In 2014, 448 billion rubles of deficit. In 15, 172, and 16, only 57 billion rubles of deficit. So including also, and we are the participants of this process for the territories of Russian Federation and the entities, and we can state that the leadership of the regions and the financial authorities and those who are interested in a good situation with the budget, so they are pursuing a different budget policy, and we can see it. Well, we're always concerned about debt. Debt up to 2.3 trillion rubles, it stays at increased colleagues only by 30 billion rubles, which is 1% to the volume of the debt that we had for January 1st, 2016. Those who had them higher than the revenues was 14. Now it's only 8. So the situation has improved a little bit. A couple of words about debt. And I should also mention that as of 2014, the Ministry of Finance is actively working with the entities of Russian Federation to substitute expensive Russian market borrowings with cheap loans. Dear participants, during 3 years, almost 3 trillion of loans, of rubles of loans were provided. Of course, it has changed the structure of the public debt. If it was commercial, was 65%. Now, beginning of this year, it is 54%. The situation, of course, in different entities is different, of course, as you can see. Last year was no exception. About 10 of them have grown, even in absolute terms, in their debt. Well, debt is 35% to the volume of tax revenues, which is lower than a year ago. Well, the agreement that we reached with the entities, they are valid for 3 years, and now starting as of this year, we will do it for 5 years, so the agreements will be signed for 5 years, and the main conditions of those agreements that the entities will be responsible for is the deficit of 10%, and the budget legislation, you know, we have even an opportunity of 15% of deficit. So non-increase of public debt for January 1st, 2017, and we hope that in 2018 it will be about 30%. So since the loans are provided to replace, so the structure of the debt should be improved in our perspective too. There are some regions which have not performed, which have not fulfilled this agreement. We have looked up at them expertly, and we will work with them further on. Ministry of Finance does not provide budget loans to the region unless it repays the loans it had been provided before. So very tough conditions, but because the debt policy should be very well weighted. A lot of changes in the tax legislation adopted last year, and the subject of this forum also mentioned the novelty, which is linked to the federal budget, 1% of profit tax, and there was a long discussion yesterday about that. Our position, I will tell you, we as experts are aware that profit tax is unequally distributed by the regions of our country. 10 of them, from 10 of them, we cover 60% of profit tax. So, and we can see that the differentiation and budget adequacy. Well, the decision was made to the 1%, but with further redistribution as financial aid to entities of Russian Federation. What it led to is that in the budget of 2017, 19% increase of the main type of inter-budget transfer for the budget provisions. And we also understand that for many of them, it's happiness to be given this kind of donation, but it's not for nothing. And the Ministry of Finance is getting prepared with for the agreement, which will set up certain parameters, which will be characterized by the dynamics of tax and non-tax revenues. Proceeds, and strange it might seem, it is very indicative that the regions themselves will propose based on the budgets they had adopted for 17-18 and based on their strategy of economic and social development. So some of the regions, well, they will provide the conditions and the indicators, and judging by the results of 2017, we will monitor, and those who don't perform, I will hope that we won't have some. They will be punished by reducing 5% of the donations for the budget adequacy. So, but there are some specific indicators also in place. The agreements postulates a number of measures that the regions have already been implementing for a long time. For instance, efficiency or non-efficiency of tax benefits, optimization program, consolidation of budget and reform of social support, and very indicative it will be when we will have the performance of 2016 to monitor and to survey, because we are aware of the experience of all the regions that already had adopted such laws to bring in order in all those areas. Certainly, we have a lot of other discussions in other regions for those who are already used to having this financial aid, and they are sort of complaining that, well, you know, but it's great that our Moscow colleagues are present here, and they will share as to what their developments were. So we have developed a standard plan of measures for the regions, and we put it on the website of our ministry of both spending and revenue. So it would be great not only for the entities who sign off, well, for them to really set their goals and of the strategic programs to take into account and be involved in the analysis of their activities. So, and now down to the part that will influence, well, this year and also 18 and 19. Now, number one. A lot was discussed at the Moscow Financial Forum last year about the consolidated group of taxpayers, and the decision the government was and the legislative initiative was supported to postpone it for another January 1st on the moratorium of group of consolidated taxpayers, and also carry over of the losses of the previous reported periods no more than 50%. According to the expert estimate of the Minfin, those decisions will lead to additional proceeds, additional revenues up to 160 billion rubles, which is 10% of the current volume of profit tax. As of 2017, the percentage of accrual of the excise of the beverages, we used to have 40%. Now it's going to be 50%. So the system of was also changed, and the elements of automation of the system also were introduced, which led, as I hope, that the alcoholic excises will be increased by 30% just in 1 year against the level of 2015. We are discussing a lot and saying that it's high time to do something from the point of view of banning the benefits, and now we do have this decision in place. As of January 1st, we will be able to set the tax benefits on the property, on movable property, only in case the territory decides to do so. So the Federation canceled this decision, and as of the 2018, the entity itself will be able to do it. So we are planning to do the following. So all those benefits will be analyzed, and by each category, we will set the period of time through when the benefit will be changed. as to how many years to pass. And a lot of questions about redistribution of revenues from excises. Well, those are the sources of the regional and local road funds. Yes, as of 2017, the norms of, according to federal budget, it was increased by 20%. It is higher now. According to our estimate, the region's losses are about 30 billion rubles. Well, what happened was redistribution, and now we have the inter-budgetary transfers inside the budget, which allows the territories to pay for their roads, for road construction. Now, just a couple of words about the inter-budgetary transfer, about the subsidies, I would like to say. Well, as of 2015 and in 2016, a lot was done from the point of view of settlement of those inter-budgetary transfer, and there's a clear-cut rule and condition of providing those subsidies, and terms of and conditions of such agreements and responsibilities. In the part of well, a lot was discussed in the community, and as of 2018, well, 18, it was 18, there will be a single level of co-financing from the federal budget and for all the entities, which is going to be equal. And for 2017, happily so for the entities, we will still have the mechanism in place. The ministries would set themselves. So it's the regulation of 2018. What we are talking a lot about the lack of transparency of distribution of budget or inter-budgetary subsidies, and we can see that even for 2017, only 67% of the total volume of subsidies have been distributed, but still it's quite a progress, because in 2016 we had only 36. But the government set before February 1st, the decision is to be made about this distribution of subsidies among the regions. So before March 1st, the agreements are to be signed. So the terms are very short, very tough, and a standard form of agreements also has been developed with only indicators linked to the government agreement to provide subsidies. And as Sergey said, yes, well, this differentiation of powers, well, we've been doing this work for 2 years, and in 2015, we undertook an analysis of changing of authorities since 2005 up to 2014, and we also have seen some good performance. Then we analyzed the entities and authorities delegated to the Russian Federation region. Well, we have identified some drawbacks and we are working at it. As a result of this, in 2016, for the first time, we have come up to the norming of the spending of the Russian budget. And as a result of the spending of 2015, the correlation was set for each region. And what was seen, only 14 regions spending is lower than the norm. All others have something to improve, and there's room for improvement for them. So those results of the inventory is put down into this methodology, and that's why those agreements appeared, and we could see that in a number of areas we have to revisit. So yes, I'm finishing. Thank you very much. There are so many interesting things to share. So, but the results of the inventory, yes, we will continue it. And this year, the objective is the Ministry of Justice now is setting up the list of those authorities, and our objective is to revisit those authorities to regulate not by to regulate it by the decrees or the orders of the ministries.
That's why we're going to continue this story after the results of 2016. We will also do the inventory stockkeeping, and we will look at how to level the subsidies, not only income-wise but also cost-wise, and stimulus for development grants. Yes, indeed, very important one. Maybe after. So positive things will come anyway. So the lady wants to cover it all. Yes, I just wanted to discuss it. Well, let's just stop here for now, and then we'll start the second round, and maybe questions will come out, and you'll be able to answer such questions. So now I think we should give the floor to the accounting chamber. So we had the chamber head speaking today, and she said we have much reserves in the country, very large sums of money for the budget, for the consolidated budget of the country. But in terms of regional budgets, how do you view this problem? If there are many inefficient costs out there and expenses, and what's your position on this in this respect? Thank you very much, esteemed colleagues. I'd like to start with the following: the positive trends that Larisa Alexandrovna has just sounded out. We can agree, but there are optimistic and pessimistic assessments. The trend is quite obvious, and yes, indeed. The debt has stabilized, and there is no trend for this debt to go down. But anyway, and saying that the consolidated deficit of the regions of budgets of the Russian Federation is just 57 billion, but 58 regions of the Russian Federation in this consolidated budget has fulfilled their budgets with deficit as of the 1st of January in the amount of 219 billion rubles. So 59 regions of the country and 219 billion rubles. After significant steps were done, it means that the situation is quite shaky in terms of budget execution. After everyone cut their costs and did the optimization and consolidation and all that, anyway, this sum is quite significant. So we should be quite conscious about this, especially those who deal with the inter-budget relations. And the question is why the situation, despite all the measures, does not change in a way that we would like it to, with the crisis situation in place. We've been in it for a couple of years now, and we need to highlight the proper mechanisms to stabilize everything. In terms of the budget for the law on the budget for 2017, 18, 19, so the measures are correct, and they should bring stabilization. And in some areas, they are temporary, because just take 1% of the profit tax, it's a forced measure, and the donors are quite skeptical about it. I do not know whether they are going to articulate their opinions on that or not, but this is a forced measure just for additional support. But this rule will not stay for the future, probably. So the 3% should be also consolidated. That's why we go away from a federation structure of the country and get back to the unitary state structure, and we do not think that this is our trend for development. So the rules should be clear and predictive and understandable. And the question is, do we have enough measures that have been taken today in order to ensure proper trajectory of development? That's what we're always talking about. And the topic of today's discussion is about the challenges for the midterm perspective. And I would like to get back to the conclusions that we have already articulated for many times, and we reported to Vladimir Vladimirovich, Mr. Putin, according to his instruction. But what really happens to the constituent entities of the country? So the assessments were done through these activities for stockkeeping of the responsibilities, revision of the responsibilities. Well, we see that some of the responsibilities went to the regional level without sufficient financial support. Well, the sums might seem minor, but when such minor sums sum up across 180 responsibilities, the sum gets quite significant, and it is differentiated between the constituent entities, starting with the basis of responsibilities that are typical for each and every region. So these responsibilities should, and Larisa Alexandrovna also mentioned that, they should be clearly defined and codified even. So for them to be interpreted in the same manner for the Ministry of Finance and therefore for the Russian Federation, well, it's a tough job, but we should do it once and then it'll all go fine. The main question today that we should be concerned about whether we have enough funds that the regions of the Russian Federation spend for execution of those responsibilities. Well, social stability depends on that, and the responsibilities and the relation and attitude towards those in power among citizenship, and how the responsibilities are executed across territories. And together with the Ministry of Finance, we have some different opinions. If we look at the budget code that regulates the data submission in the register of expenses, liabilities, we think that's the main instrument for assessment. We see that we've got one detail in here. It's methodological in its nature. So Article 87 says that the register gets the data about the value of responsibilities that should be executed at the territory of a region. When we look at the data, and that's what was done during similar activities in 2015. So the register shows the data, how many regions of Russia in 2015, how much funds they had for this responsibility. And that's a bit different data. In many regions, we see that due to underfinancing, and it's just a forced measure for the budget expenses, responsibilities, budget responsibilities, liabilities are financed less, and the number of paid services is growing. And that's not a good thing to have with today's condition of the budget. So that's why the question regarding how much responsibilities really cost and how much money is spent in the regions, that's the data that should, through automated system, that should be analyzed, and they should be the main instrument for assessment to assess what kind of deficit we have for opportunities. Not a technological deficit, that is the deficit between the income and the expenses, but the deficit of opportunities for executing the budget and the responsibilities that it implies. Another thing that should also be discussed, apart from the responsibilities the regions have after the inventory and codification and clarification, we've got another question to answer. Starting 2013, the Russian Federation started the program target methodology for formulation of expenses for all levels, all budget levels across regions. And this means that in order to ensure development and avoid disproportions and gaps and to avoid the drawbacks, and well, actually, that's why special state programs are developed for, we should have certain expenses in order to ensure all that. But the second block of expenses that all regions unavoidably has. So the first is about regulation. So today's condition of the budget system ensures a specific level, and on this level, everyone should anyway 100% fulfill their obligations. Another question about the indicators of programs. It is not such linear because any region has their own problems within the framework of the programs that should be executed. For instance, the destruction of obsolete houses. Some regions have such housing, others do not. Some of the regions didn't participate in the program at all because the rules of participation also differentiated regions depending on the potential of their budgets. But what does it mean? I mean, this program for the target methodology. Well, this is a very proper step to make. Previously, programs were announced as an area for development. If you have opportunity, if you have the means, you can participate. So it was not mandatory. But today, the requirements have changed. You have to participate, but you have to also, as the head of the region, you have to fulfill specific things according to the program, according to specific dates. So the region has to fulfill part one of the obligations, and then he should raise money to meet the goals set by the state. So the regions are subsidized, yes, but actually it's arguable that the subsidies amount should depend on some of the indicators. Well, there are some programs to support villages, rural areas, where the level of funds needed can actually spur the development of the rural areas and production of various goods. Well, it's again about import substitution, but actually it's also export-oriented potential. But it doesn't mean that we should tell the region that has already approached some level of development in agriculture. We cannot say them that we will change the rules and you will have to pay larger compensations than other regions around you because you have a completely different potential in this. But the question is as follows. If we say that you will be supported in order to fulfill the targets of the state program, the region should have in its income structure, should have the funds to actually meet the targets, to use this subsidy, because the subsidy is not just coming per se, but to achieve a result. And it's about construction of schools and construction of kindergartens, and also increase of wages. But in the inventory that was done by the Minister of Finance, Yuri Vitalyevich, how much time do we have? Just 30 seconds. Capital investments that ensure development are not considered in this balance, and the programs that have been articulated and being executed are not considered again. But what are the funds that can be used by the region to meet the goals? And maybe that's why regions go and take debt, because they do not have their own income, and that's why the deficit comes in when they try and tackle those issues and meet the goals. And this deficit can be covered only through the debt they can attract. Well, it's good when the budget can give you a budget loan with beneficiary terms, but sometimes budgets cannot cover all those expenses. So it means that something should be changed within this mechanism, and both blocks of both parts of the whole problem should be considered. This is a very lengthy topic, but the most important thing for regions is the clear predictability of what will happen. Not today. Well, today we are talking about the measures to ensure stabilization, but what will come next? What will come tomorrow? What will be the rules for inter-budget relations? Law 172. Well, unfortunately, it hasn't yet been in force. So it actually implies that the development strategy and the development goals, the budget policy should be aligned for it. And in our country, budget policy, well, at least for 2025, well, we do not have a thing like this. We just try and cover the gaps with the instruments and the methodologies that we've articulated during the process of our cooperation. We need proper budget strategy and proper budget policy that might actually regulate such questions I articulated, and another thing, the goals and the areas to move to should be clarified. So we should say that we will go to pursue those targets to make our regions and our country well off, and that's when everything goes fine. But now Program 36, and we are always talking about it, and Larisa can agree. Do you know what does it mean, the state Program 36? Development of federalism with specific instruments where the main coordinator is the Ministry of Finance. In this program, well, it doesn't have a thing like this. So we all, after such discussions, need to consider it very seriously and develop a strategic document with mandatory participation of regions of Russia in this activity. And after developing the general rules, we have to clarify the steps to fulfill all that within the framework of the state program. And that's when we step by step reduce our debt. Well, we have stabilized it now, but we need to reduce it, and we need to take debt for development, not for covering the previous debt through expenses of regional and municipality budgets. Thank you very much. I'm ready for your questions. Alexander Bogdanovich, the position of the Ministry of Finance and the Audit Chamber. Well, now we've heard the positions, but what are the innovations and what are the region's experiences from your region, the Altai region? Just your overview, please. I wanted to just make a general point. For me, because I am in my main profession, I'm a lawyer, and looking at it through the prism of legislative regulation, I would like to just get back to our main law, the constitution of the country. The constitution ensures the single legal status of personalities in Russia and the single approach towards the main social rights and freedoms of people of our country, irrespective of how the state power is structured, where, in what part of the country a person lives. So when we're talking about specific points of constitution that are about distribution and differentiation of various powers in the country, well, it is again about how the power is structured. But the power, irrespective of its structure and distribution of the responsibilities and irrespective of delegation processes, should ensure the general status, constitutional status of people in the country. We get back to this subject when we define the status of the veterans of the Great Patriotic War. Well, it doesn't matter where he or she lives in the country, but they fulfilled their constitutional obligation. So today we are having an anniversary of the destruction of the forces of the enemy in the Moscow region. Who created this victory? The whole country did it, and the large contribution came from Siberian troops. And when we are talking about the donors, and we are very easily articulate those terms, recipient and donor regions, and I would not actually see it through the prism of ruble cooperation and relations, monetary relations. You know, I talked to a colleague once. In their region, they have oil and gas, and it means they have money in their budget. And they told me, just do not offend your donors, but just look at your plate in the morning and whose products are in it. So there are such terms as products donorship or human capital donors. You know, I've got a piece of statistics for 11 months. 9,000 people left the Altai region. Well, of course, people say that, yes, it's not very nice to live in the region, let's leave. But where do they go? To other regions, since other regions have been developing and are developing today through the human capital that is coming into these regions, with those that come from classic agriculture territories like the Altai region. You know, we say goodbye to those who left us and went to work to Tyumen or Tomsk and do coal mining and oil production. You know, I can give you another piece of statistics that shows how many people are enrolled into the army and the and other special services per 100,000 of people. And who is the donor? Who is the recipient? That's an open question. So I think that we need to structure our inter-budget relations considering those basic constitution principles. At the same time, we should not create those budget abuses. And of course, regions should increase their own income, and we need to monitor how financial support is used and what results it really brings. So all those steps from the Ministry of Finance, well, they are quite clear for us, and they are in demand. They are obvious. Probably, Larisa Alexandrovna, I think those steps should have been made earlier, for instance, in our region, and maybe our position would have been better. You know, I can talk a lot about the Altai region, and quite convincingly, even without the prominent Russian author Shukshin's references or other prominent actors of our culture. 2.4 million people in the region, number 22 in terms of territory and population in the country, the most evenly populated territory in the eastern part of Russia. We're number 2 after Kemerovo in the density of population. But what does it mean? 1,598 villages and cities, more than 16,000 kilometers of roads, number 2 in the country, 890 medical centers, 1,100 schools, 80% of them is minor, small schools, and so on and so forth. But I think in this audience we do not need to say that to actually have 10 schools of 50 pupils or one school for 500 pupils and students, well, the expenses are very much different in the two cases. We've got about 400 school buses working in the region, and the school routes are more than 3,500 kilometers in the region. We need to ensure their proper conditions, and at any day, at any time, even under minus 40 degrees Celsius, you know, we need to have it all working well. A lot of problems in our regions, indeed, but we do not want to moan. Just a couple of figures, and they show the results of our joint work together with the Ministry of Finance. You know, in 2005, we had 47% of our own income in the budget. 53% is the funds of the federal center. This year, according to the adopted budget, our own income is 71%. The financial assistance is just 29%. Yes, the Ministry of Finance is helping us a lot, plus 163% against 2005, but our own income against 2005 plus 457%. Yes, this year, through redistribution of this, well, it's just 1%, but we have 33% of growth of the aid from the federal budget. Well, it might seem a large figure, but if we didn't have this add-on, we wouldn't have the surplus during the recent 5 years. This surplus enabled us to ensure in 5 years the growth rate not lower than the average Russian. But what do we do? For instance, per 500 institutions, we cut the number of the offices. Optimization of the budget sphere, that's how it is called. If you have a school with 0 students in it, well, you understand what I mean. If you close the school down, and those who close down medical points, you understand what I mean. Another figure,
which is very indicative. So we're number 3 in the country by the number of municipalities, and by the number of municipalities in the rural areas, we are number 1 in the country. And the total number of municipalities, we are number 3 after Tatarstan and Bashkortostan. So we even made an unprecedented step to bundle several territories. You can just imagine what it means, what resistance we had initially, the local elite, those actively resisting elites to bundling, which are federal executives which operate in every district of the cities. And you now can understand what it all means. So now about budget spending and different communal services. Only in the budget sphere, in the recent 4 years, we have reduced our expenses by 2 billion rubles. So what I mean to say is that we believe that the decision is the right one, 1% decision. We welcome this decision. Moreover, for the future, we think that we should study the issue and the profits of, for instance, energy, banks, oil and producing companies, to consolidate it in the federal budget to further distribute among the entities and not to take into account in the calculation of the tax potential of a region. And at this, I would like to maybe mention another point here, which is the budget provisions per one citizen. We are not comparing ourselves with Moscow. No way. Well, we will always protect Moscow if anything happens, but never compare to Moscow. But when neighboring territories, where the level of budget provisions digitally higher than us, and the level of budget adequacy is higher in those territories with more donations or subsidizing percentage, that's what should be really reviewed and estimated and possibly adjusting. Now about increasing our own revenues. If asked, I would sincerely say that maybe yes, and with 45% or more than 1 million people of the rural population, and where agricultural sector with food industries cover 30% of the gross regional product, we do have some reserves, and we're working at them. But what we have accomplished, we practically don't have tax benefits because we cannot afford them. And I will acquire it in the evaluation of the investment climate of the region, because we don't have any fringe benefits, any tax benefits. And also, the criteria of social support, we introduced it in all cases when it is not directly forbidden legislatively. And so on. I can enumerate all those measures a lot. But I would like to say that the work that we have started, both in the Ministry of Finance and the Parliament and the Council of Federation and the core committees, we support the work and we understand it, and we will do our best to be adequate to all those modern requirements. And for your reference, for you not to suspect me of being self-indulgent, Altai region debt is just non-existent. We just don't have debt. We have about 2 billion of debt to the Ministry of Finance. And we will try not to borrow anywhere else, and also we hope for the understanding of the Ministry of Finance for the future. So it doesn't mean that we will use financial aid of the federal center to just set off or level off the low level of financial management, which is not, and everybody in the audit chamber is well aware of our high quality. Thank you. Thank you very much. Maxim Gennadievich, so Moscow was mentioned several times. And is Moscow interested in the situation in the regions? Some inter-budgetary relations between the regions and the federal center. So where's the position which differs very much, seemingly, from the other regions? Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak up and maybe answer to some of the questions. Well, I would start saying that we are very much interested in inter-budgetary relations, because if you are not aware of it, they will be aware of you. So, and 2017 showed exactly this. So speaking about the status of the Moscow budget, I will allow myself to start with a couple of words. So the current status is quite good, and for 2016, we had quite a good operational profit, which was directed to pay the public debt, quite big sums, and that's why I would right away compliment some of the colleagues that we should not calculate aggregate debt of, let's look at deficit debt of the deficit regions. So it's of which will show quite a different dynamics. Why we have this kind of status of the budget? Because for the recent 3 years, we've been very active in implementing the authority that the Russian Federation had provided us. First of all, tax authorities of different types, like taxes, like efficient work on non-tax, investment promotions, non-stationary trade outlets. So in 2016, as a result of all this, became the first year when the growth rates of the budget revenues were higher than in the other regions. Before that, we had been lagging behind, but unfortunately, 2016 had not leveled off or set off this lagging behind. So in the 5 years, the Moscow revenues grew only 33%, as well, whereas other regions grew by 44%. But we were very active in spending, and we were establishing a procurement system and the reform of our finance of budget network, and it was also introducing the target criteria, and we were actively working at it. And the most important thing is to concentrate resources in the priority areas. That's how we managed to achieve the financial performance that we currently have. Where is the problem then? The main problem, as we see it, is in the deficit of the regions. And the numbers here of the average deficit, of the average temperature per hospital, should not come us down, though I understand that those numbers that were quoted here, they are preliminary. The turnover not yet included. But Yuri Vitalovich was right saying that we should pay attention to the indicators of the deficit of the deficit regions. That's how we should look at. And unfortunately, it is very high, this indicator. And if we look at the debt indicator, we will then see that besides operational deficit, they also have high debt and debt payments. On the one hand, we are not very happy about the decision that was made to redistribute 1% of profit tax, and a lot was said yesterday about that. But just for your understanding, 1% of profit tax is the result of implementation of 3 big projects in Moscow: migration, which gave us 14 billion, trade fee, which is 8 billion, and patent system of taxation. So if we add all up, that will be the result of the 3 years' work. And it was we were just deprived of it in just one decision. And it's comparable to procurement of pharmaceuticals for the city. It's very tangible. It's all very well. Maybe I would disagree in some points. It's not a well-needed measure. It was just very simple, the most simple measure how to solve the thing, and that they decided to do it again at the expense of the active regions. Just several numbers to quote again. For instance, 43 regions have set the transport tax rate for the most powerful cars substantially lower than the maximum. And that's the authority, as you know, about as of 2008. It has not been indexed, and nevertheless, the regions, even for they keep it lower, even for the most powerful and most expensive cars. And for Moscow, it was a very difficult decision. 21 regions did not even start to introduce physical entities property tax. They didn't even start doing it, though 2 years have passed out of the 5 for the reform. So 2017 also was missed. 27 regions did not introduce the property tax of organizations. Do you hear a lot about auctions for promotion or advertisements in the big cities? Besides Moscow, nothing, I think. And so on and so forth. So the list can be longer. And another thing to mention, we are very active in promoting our experience in, for instance, taxes or migration, and we are providing our decisions and our solutions. Here is the method, here is the norms, and you can use them, and let's meet, let's discuss, let's exchange experience, and we are talking to mostly to the donor regions, those who feel quite good, but the request as for the deficit regions, well, there are very few requests from them. And we talk a lot about the evaluation of monetary requirements, but maybe we should talk about the efficiency of mobilization of your own resource base, because otherwise it so happens that we make unpopular decisions, overload our economy with unpopular measures, and Muscovites making them tense with additional taxes and trying to squeeze additional money from mediators. And then it's just is redistributed to the regions which don't want to work with their population. And it's just easier for them to say, thank you very much, Larisa, for additional money you gave us. And that's okay for them. Well, Larisa, we always say thank you to Larisa. Well, colleagues, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. It's words of support. That's the function of redistribution in the country. Well, colleagues, hang on, hold on. I'm almost finishing. So the most important subject the Ministry of Finance did last year was the decision on the condition of the donations. That was something we were foursquare for, and we were exchanging our experience and even provided proposals. And the standard plan that Larisa mentioned, it is a very important thing. It's just a guideline as to what decisions should be made by the regions, like the public finance reforming program we used to have, and we knew what we had to do. That's very similar, and I think that there's conditionality of the donations. I think we should implement it, though the Council of Federation was sort of had a heated discussion about that, but I think that's the right thing. And yes, and amendments also. Unfortunately, I don't think that we will manage to stay at the very high level the Ministry of Finance has set for us. But let's do it quite accurately, because we all need all those things. And Larisa, maybe my proposal would be, because we used to have this reforming program, because it was a ranging program. Let's maybe do something like that on mobilization of revenues and using all the experience, because it's not just to range everybody and but to understand for everybody to see what kind of experience there is out there. We also know when we borrow somebody else's experience, and many colleagues from, unfortunately, donor regions, and we do implement their innovations, but maybe some others also should be that active. And another thing to stress, Yuri Vitalyevich said that we all need certainty for the nearest future, and not only for the nearest, maybe for the coming 5 years at least. And this certainty mandatorily should include an understanding that the volume of redistribution among the regions should not grow. Well, okay, 1% decision was made, and the situation obviously turned out to be a little bit better than expected. Okay, excellent. Let's at least stay at this level and work maximally mobilizing the base we have, and to maximally efficiently spend the money we have. Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, Moscow has done a lot. And unlike other participants, I did not relocate to Moscow. I'm a Muscovite by origin. Larisa is also a Muscovite, original Muscovite. And Yuri is also, Yuri Vitalyevich is also original Muscovite. So not everybody is relocating to Moscow. We are only the two of us. Well, but I grew up at the construction sites all over the territory of the Soviet Union, though I was born in Moscow. Colleagues, we planned our event as an expert panel, and me as the moderator, not to be thrown a stone. Where are the experts and not just state executives? Let's start a round of expert statements. First, the first floor is given to Mr. Deryugin from the Gaidar Institute. How do you view the situation that has been outlined today by the Ministry of Finance and the regions and the Audit Chamber? How do you view the situation from the point of view of the experts? Very many questions have been outlined today. I will not be able to comment all of them, maybe just some which have been mentioned, but we have representatives of the regions and the MinFin. So this kind of communication between the regions and Audit Chamber and that MinFin did us this way, did not do us this way. Well, I don't say that that's good or bad, but there's an impression that the ministry does something for the regions, but they support or they don't, but they are sort of in a very subordinated position. They are very dependent. Well, Russia is a federative body, well, a country, and we have a Council of Federation. Once it was mentioned today already, but I would like to remind you that all decisions and all laws which are about the budgets, and distribution of norms, of taxes, of tax rates, they all have to pass through the procedure of approval by the Council of Federations. And if the regions are happy or unhappy with some decisions, they have to remember that they once have approved it. If they say that they don't have enough money from MinFin, from Duma, from, those guys did something unhappy for us, you have, guys, to remember that all the regions, almost all the regions, have already approved it initially. And so for many issues about redistribution, whether it's better or good, the regions should ask those questions to themselves. So as for the questions, for instance, about improvement of budget transfer methodology, I would like to express my approval of the work MinFin has done, huge work done, and I was involved in it for 14 years. in, attempts of correct calculation of spending obligations of the entities. Well, it's a very difficult subject, very comprehensive. You don't have to hope that someone ever will be able to calculate as to how much money every region will have to perform. Well, all those estimates will be very inaccurate. And to hope that we will have some single norms for all and for them to be economically very justified, well, we should not lay such hopes. But the fact that Minfin has really done the first attempt to at least assess the spending obligations of the regions, well, at least as some separate obligations, because our formula of the calculations, which is on the one hand is very simple, which is a plus, and on the other hand, it doesn't take into account a number of some important factors which really influence the cost of the different resources for the region. And the fact that the Minfin is doing the work is very good. Thank you. I support it. Thank you very much. Let's continue the expert panel. Natalia Golovanova. You belong to the Scientific Institute. It's Industrial Scientific Research Institute. So you are closely working with Minfin of Russia. And so what's your view about all those novelties we are discussing today? Well, I would continue this federal state and would remind you that when we look at the spending obligations of regions, we usually are in the mindset that they have to set it themselves. It's Law 184 that they are entitled to do it. But if you read industrial legislation, it doesn't mean so, because all spending for healthcare, which is more than 40% of the consolidated budget of the region, are put by the state guarantee program. 14% is something the region cannot influence on. Of course, they set the norms are lower. Then the prosecutor's office comes to them and asks to increase it. Then the road industry regions cannot decrease or reduce those spendings, because they have to spend as much as they have their revenue forecast. So, respectively, about 8% more of consolidated budget spending is linked. And plus 4 more spending is delegated authorities by way of subvention. More than, they just cannot reduce those spendings because the volume has been cascaded down to them by the federal state. And indeed, Aleksandr says that the Council of Federation initially endorses it all and approves it all. All those normative acts, all those changes are initially approved. So what I would like to say about the most burning discussion is the 1% of profit tax. Well, it's a measure that was badly needed, but I wouldn't agree with the speed it was done at. In the regions, yes, last year the budget was yearly, but we used to have midterm planning, we used to have programs, and the regions set up their forecast, not only the donor regions, but also the nation subsidized regions. They also were doing it based on the profit tax dynamics. And when it all happens just overnight, it breaks the whole system destroys the whole system of forecasts or assumptions. If you do it this way, budget relations is a living creature. You cannot just calculate it once, because we did during the reform of 2003, before 2005. But the system is ever-changing, but you cannot change it overnight, because otherwise the regions just don't have time to readjust, and they have to do it at least mid-term. ideally for 5-year horizon, but at least 3-year horizon for them to be able to adapt their budget to the fact. Because otherwise, yes, it makes us very happy, this story about consolidation of subsidies, because in 3 strategic documents, from one document to another, there was a goal set that we have to consolidate the subsidies. And finally, well, maybe the debt of the regions should first increase and then the crisis to evolve for this consolidation to happen.
And the Ministry of Finance did a lot to achieve that. Thank you very much, Alexey Viktorovich Kostyukov. So you are a young senator. Can I call you this? So I've been with the Senate for 4 months now. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So I've been listening to the discussions for 2 days now at this forum, and mostly donor regions are talking, and the Novgorod region is a recipient. And in this sense, we of course say thank you to the Ministry of Finance, because redistribution of budget resources is the direct obligation of the state in all countries across the globe. And the liberal economists, they do not go away from this approach. But in this sense, you you just got the experts in Mr. Shukshin's manner. But the Federation Council, the budget code says that the regions offer their ideas for the budget project. And so it's a complicated process. And it's not just we can say that the Council of the Federation is responsible for everything. For the Novgorod region, innovations of the Ministry of Finance are quite beneficial. We're number 59 across the country. If we take the Yaroslavl region, for instance, the density of population out there is 4 times higher than in our region. And the wages difference is 4.5 times between regions, and the income per capita the difference is 6.5 times. The budget financing difference, sometimes it's 10 times difference. So in this situation we're living in. But the Novgorod region, we've got 200 kilometers to get to St. Petersburg and 500 kilometers to get to Moscow. So it's about human potential that is just leaving the region. 5 neighborhoods with 5 and less 5,000 people of population density. It's not a village, but a municipality region. That's our situation. But when I hear for the second day on responsible, irresponsible regions, in 2016 the Novgorod region budget is without deficit. We do not increase the nominal expenses in the state debt. For 2017, we adopted a no deficit budget without increasing of the state debt, and we have 15 billion rubles left. So the growth rates of our income is 116% for 2015-16. So we optimized our costs very much to prepare schools for the new education year for 2016 in our region. We actually allocated 10,000 rubles per school. And whether we're responsible or not, we are among regions without budget deficit. We do not increase the budget for 2-3 years on, and whether we're responsible or not, well, just think for yourself. The regions, when they redistribute the funds, not just take the funds, let's be politically correct. And in this sense, I do not want to speak on behalf of other regions. Yes, we have regions, we have neighbors who, for instance, have the state debt. This year we will have it on the level of 60%. Nominally it is not growing, but since the income is growing, then the percentage is dropping from 70 to 60% just in a year through optimization of our internal expenses, but we have neighbors with a state debt of more than 100%, and the inter-budget funding they receive 3 times more than us, and they have low budget sufficiency. But the program implies 37 for them and 8 for us. But we were quite active on working on optimization of our costs and all that. In many regions, they have just started. And it's hard job for them to start 2017. And yes, I agree. We've been for 3 years on working under significant budget constraints, and actually many regions did not realize that, and that's why they increased the debt. So let us not just measure the average temperature across the hospital, as they say it, but what's the essence of this? What's the meaning of this budget redistribution? We've got socioeconomic inequality. Well, 170 senators in the Federal Council, 2 from every region, 2 from Moscow and 2 from the Novgorod region, for instance. Yes, it is equality, political equality, but in socio-economic situation, we face significant inequality among the people, the citizens of Russia. Yes, we mentioned constitution, and we need to ensure equal living standards. And yes, we need to ensure them. Yes, there are a lot of drawbacks in this process, but we think we should create proper conditions for people not to leave our region, for them to have at least a minimal level of social services in line with the status of the citizen of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much for your attention. You know, I'd like to continue this, to follow this discussion on regions. So you started to compare yourself against neighbor regions. Alexei Grishkov is sitting next to you, deputy governor of the Arkhangelsk region. I do not know. Well, I do not know your opinion. Please share. So an official sitting on the experts panel, you know, to the left or to the right from you. So anyway, I'd like to say no to some positions, to some points you articulated. Actually, when I listened to what Yuri Vitalyevich is talking about, not because I'm an ex-audit chamber employee, we already discussed some of the things related to this, but that's what I wanted to, very briefly, I've got 3 to 5 minutes, I just wanted to articulate something related to rationing of the value of the cost of execution of obligations and responsibilities, and to set the minimal level of funds that are needed to fulfill the obligations. When you say that it is impossible, I cannot agree. What does it mean, impossible? From this position, impossible, we have all other things coming out. When the responsibilities are just neglected and no financing is coming in. So the federal responsibilities might be delegated, but only financed within the scope of execution of the responsibility. For instance, payments to various groups of people, categories of people, but the administration of execution of such responsibilities and the wages of those who, for instance, do the post services, and sometimes post services, it's tens of billions of rubles, and no financing to the sector. And the first question we discussed before we set off for this forum with our specialists and the Ministry of Finance, so let's just define the cost of those responsibilities, the value. So now we do not quite understand how much it costs for the regions. And that's one of the main comments. And what Yuri Vitalyevich is talking about, yes, I agree entirely. In part related to inventory. So we talk a lot about it here at this forum, and today the only thing, I do not know how other regions, what they think, but we are actually switched off from this process. So we submitted the registers And that's it. And we will actually get some figures sort of secretly. And some of the heads of the region went somewhere and received some tables, and we share and look at figures and compare what we have. They think that out of 60 billion, our 10 billion of expenses is something excessive. But the question is why we try to. That's why actually we try to make assumptions why it so happened. For instance, we think that the specificities of a northern region is not considered properly. Our region is like France, territory-wise, 1,100,000 population, and in France 60 million, and that's why all the peculiarities, the northern coefficients, ratios, and the wages, things that are not considered, higher wages and utilities, large utilities costs. Differentiation in tariffs is needed. And another point about compensations, well, it is assumed as national economy, as far as I remember. In my perspective, it is just social expenses. We offset. Despite the fact that we offset the resources for the supplying companies, but those are the expenses, the costs through which we can actually have tariffs on the same level for our people. So it's social expenses anyway, in our understanding, and they are not considered properly. Yes, we can continue talking about it. This subject is very, very interesting. But finishing my speech, Yuri Vitalyevich, what you were talking about, the budget policy, I think before the basis of the budget policy is discussed, I think the budget policy for regional development basics should be considered in more details. And we expect this thing to come out last year, but unfortunately we haven't yet received the document, haven't yet developed. Well, inter-budget relations, it's mostly about, in my understanding, it's a technological thing to tackle. And they should come from the basics of the state policy. Thank you very much, Alexey Petrovich. So this wave of speeches, presentations from regions, let's continue it. Mr. Korsun, first deputy head of the Kostroma region. Am I right? You're right. Thank you very much. A year ago, in a different room, the room was larger, me and the governor of the Yevreyska region, we articulated those problems. We asked people to visit us. More successful regions, we asked them to tell us what we're doing wrong. And I just asked Maxim Oreshkin to visit us. But what I hear from you, yes, we've done all that, actually. Unfortunately, we are on a list with a large debt, but the donation part is not very large. We make around 3/4 of the budget of income, and all regions have their own peculiarities. Northern territories, and we are in the central federal region, but the center of frost we had the previous weeks was in the Kostroma region, minus 44 degrees Celsius, and that's why in utilities the bills grew last week. So the agreements we have to sign, individual peculiarities of regions are very important. Through heroic efforts in 2015, we fulfilled what we had to. In 2016, we didn't. But the increase was just 11 and 3%. The previous 3 years we were growing, and investment positions of our region are quite good. But the competition between regions, recipient regions, we cannot offer such benefits to investors as the donor regions can. And investors say, we are prepared to work with you, but your neighboring donor region is better in this and that. So we've got resources. For instance, we have forests. And today we meet people who are prepared to set up producing facilities, timber producing facilities in the region, and that's good. So I'd ask the Minister of Finance and Larisa Alexandrovna, please consider those individual aspects. What we are forced to do today, and officials who are here today, a lot of financial documents and project management. The project management is good, but it's not a cure for all illnesses. Without money, we cannot do anything. So if they think that managers are bad, then let's change them. Just look at us and assess our work, and just if you think that our wages are so high, just check it. We actually bought Renault Logans for our administration. Well, if you want the managers to drive Lada Granta, it's fine, and the savings will be just copics. But the changes that we see today, if you have large debts and you cannot fulfill the agreements, just issue securities. Last year we were forced to do so. If we could have issued, then it's just 11%. But the loans the interest rate for loans is higher. But what will be the trend for next year? Can you tell us? If we can take loans for 6%, and then the audit chamber comes in, and previous years they visited us, and they will ask us, what were you thinking about when you were issuing the securities? And we need, for instance, 8 billion, and our income is just 20 billion. And another question to you, because I listened to the speeches yesterday and today. So they say that someone were given something, but we have minus 200 million. Probably we will get more, but we received 850 plus the leveling minus 220, 1% was taken from us, 370 million minus duties, minus 500 in donations and the balancing. So it means the result is minus 280 million. So far. My finance guys tell me this. If I'm mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong. Ivan Vladimirovich, please. Yes, thank you very much. That's it from me. So, just to start a discussion, we hear your position, and we visited your region this year, and we made the audit. So please do not say that no one visits you. So please tell me, how will you actually fulfill the program for destruction of obsolete housing before 1st of September 2017? Will you be able to tackle this issue to meet the goal? Just a couple of words. Yes, just yes or no, please. Yes, of course, we will do everything. We will go to the bank and ask for money. What else? But they give us money. Despite all the problems, the banks give us money. But you should do such things through your budgets, as your obligation and the condition of the federal program. Mr. Tsitsin gives you in this, and he thinks that you should do it in this manner. Ivan Vladimirovich, a rhetorical question. One last point. Another problem here. Problems that the Minister of Finance can tackle together with us. And there are several ministries that set goals for us, and they do not care. Ms. Golodets is only concerned about her own problems, and that's okay, but I'm concerned about construction problems. So, and we should do whatever we can. So, Yuri Vitalyevich, colleagues, okay, I'm giving the floor now to expert, Mr. Kovalevskiy. So he analyzed it a lot and participated in the best practice of development of regional programs for reforms. And now he's analyzing the experience of regions. Please, your opinion, please. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We analyzed, Larisa Alexandrovna already mentioned that this year was quite successful for the regions, according to preliminary estimations, and the forum's audience is also quite optimistic. But starting 2013, the regions faced quite a difficult situation, and we looked at what regions were among those offering best practices in optimization of costs, and what the difficulties they faced on this road, and what negative consequences might come out, and what the success stories were. So the main pilot regions were the Ulyanovsk, Volgograd and Moscow regions, but we also looked at other regions as well. So some of the areas. This year's that cut the number of municipalities by 56%. And the interesting practice here, I think, is the fact that the volume of financing is calculated during 3 years, and the donations, the subsidies are not dropping, and 75% is excessive money outside the formula, and it goes to development of territories and increase of wages for municipal workers, and also consolidation in other regions, not only among those I articulated. They consolidated the city administration and the neighborhoods administrations, and also consolidation of functions of various state offices for the city and for the region, for the municipality. So the drawbacks that might be witnessed here, representative of this Federal Council mentioned that. So this consolidation of municipal offices brings positive results in many aspects, except for, well, the municipalities and municipal offices get more stronger, but actually rural benefits, they are lost, and that's a bad thing to have, and doctors and teachers are not happy about this process. And also the peasants, farmers, peasants and farms actually are slipping out of this program, and it's also not very positive. If the territory stays there, yes, but if it is consolidated, then no. But consolidation, I mean, it's enlarging of cities, municipalities. Rural areas are included into them. That's the whole thing about the process. About social support measures. Social support measures, a couple of words. So it's all very ambiguous, because many regions did the inventory of the benefits and highlighted the benefits. The majority of them are now offered based on the assessment of the situation. Among positive practices is implementation of social contracts. If a person fulfills the social contract and he is not on the list of the recipients. But about negative sides, many benefits were just cut, and cut for those who really needed them. But it was a forced measure. But anyway, budget does not have a target to earn money. It's not a corporation, but when you cut something for those in need, well, it's not a good thing to have. Many regions achieved some successes. State procurement centralization, electronic platforms for small state procurement, joint procurement, and also assistance for large state procurement, and many other aspects. Many regions, I can give you more details on that, achieved a lot in this process, and no obvious negative consequences to that. So the maintenance of the state services bodies, of state power, the measures are quite obvious, but when the regions report saying that they, well, about positive things they are quite obvious, but negative things, lack of indexation of wages for those working in state service, and it means high churn of people. And when people say that in offices, state offices have many young people working in them, well, it means that they have graduates, those who cannot find good jobs after graduation, and it's a concern. But another thing, they canceled the guarantees that were promised to people who started state service a couple of years ago. Another thing, about state offices. Optimization came in, but the restructuring, and yes, there are positive cases about attracting non-state suppliers and centralization of budget accounting and outsourcing. But about negative consequences, we should articulate that may decrease implementation, increase of wages through headcount cuts in the offices, and reduction of financing and consolidation and enlarging. In many cases, it resulted in poorer quality of social services, especially in the healthcare area, especially those financed from the budget, not the insurance structure. So that's also something we should think about. And it is assumed that the coming years will be more positive. That's why we should do something in this area. Thank you very much. Let's give the microphone to Ms. Butskaya, the Minister of Finance, the Ulyanovsk region. Since we already mentioned your region, please, the floor is yours. Just in a couple of words. Yes, very short presentation. I just wanted to say that Ulyanovsk region doesn't have an opportunity to earn so much the regions with oil and gas can earn. But the policy of the Ulyanovsk region was aiming at attracting investors and involving and attracting investments. At the first stage, there were some considerations about offering tax benefits, but at the same time,
certain requirements to provide benefits were taken to investors. It's a salary, equal salary, average for Ulyanovsk region, and the payback period of the projects. And I would like to say that during the decade, the volume of investments grew 6 times, though only 4.5 times over Russia. And we provided 2.7 billion on tax benefits to investors, and 9.7 billion of revenues we acquired. So the difference is 7 billion. So we should also mention that this is very important for employment, and we provide property tax benefit to Avestar, and they try to provide housing for the 5,000 their employees. So they have a housing program in exchange to this benefit. And I would like to just mention that now 2016 has shown high performance of this policy, the main instrument of attracting investors, which means that in 2016 we were positive by 9.5 billion rubles and 133% of growth rate against last year. And also, we are striving for increasing our own tax base, but we also realize that we are thus losing. Well, of course, the tax potential is so we were not included into the donations. Only 44 entities were given subsidies, with no more than 112% of growth of revenue. So this problem of freebies, well, I think it does exist, but we are working at it. So further on, to put some stimulating role in the donations of leveling off, yes, we realize that there are grants and they were given and to the entities previous years, but the methodology of distribution was not that equal. 80% of the total base, and 20% is distributed based on 10 criteria. Different indicators, its mortality rate, demography, and so on. And our request for the 20 billion to really have a transparent methodology linked to how the entity is working at its tax potential and its own base, and not to scatter it or dilute it over 10 to 15 criteria, maybe to have only 4 to 5 criteria to provide, to give those grants at. And now about the agreements. Indeed, the agreements on equaling donations. So they create certain conditions, and we agree with some. It's benefits, inventory, and efficiency of benefits, and also the terms and conditions on authorities' inventory when many entities have authorities which are not very relevant to them, and economic indicators also. Here we have to approach personally to each entity. Economic indicators may be better for the grant methodology. But nevertheless, they are still in place, and the only thing to mention is that non-performance of all those conditions will lead to 5% reduction of donations for 2017, and I think there's certain risk here that the donation will be distributed for 2018 in 2017 by the federal budget law. And when actually, according to the reporting, it will be identified that non-performance will lead to reduction of 5% in the current year, when the entities will have to just drop their spending, not being prepared. So thank you very much. Galina Zdislavna Rubtsova, Minister of Finance of the Republic of Komi. And to finalize our expert discussion, we are a region, to some degrees we are, we have only 295 million of donations. Of course, we are losing this 1% of profit tax, which is allowed around 1 billion. And we are not getting anything. Well, we think that tough conditions on the leveling agreements. So we want those entities and regions which maybe I think that the conditions should be sort of easier for us to perform. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sergey? What is your plan? I think we should recap already, because being aware that Larisa is ready to answer some of the questions that have been articulated, it would be the right thing to do. And I would like to just continue the question imposed on us by the experts. It's in the role of Council of Federation in this inter-budgetary relations. I would like to request you to take to read the guidelines for the coming process, not analyzing all the 15 pages of those proposals of the government. Mostly it's the ministry. It's from the Ministry of Finance. Some recommendations are devoted to the industrial ministers. They have been fulfilled almost 60%, and the recommendation of immediate inventory, because it was impossible to start the program number 36, the state program, because without having estimated the status as to where we are, it's impossible to move on. So that's why criticism, of course, is good, but criticism for the sake of criticism, but for the sake of objectivity, I should say that we've been very productive in our relationship in the recent 3 years. Though, of course, still in the parliamentary hearings and the committees meetings, we'll have to do a lot. But here we got together to identify the priorities. And just recently, December 21st, we met the president. And when I allowed myself on behalf of the Council of Federation to ask Mr. Putin to just review and just, provide a stimulus of mobilization of regional authorities to administer their, for instance, tobacco taxes and excise. He said a good idea. Just prepare your proposal. We will support you. I mean, because the excise will go up to the federal budget. And according to the assumptions of 2016, I told the president that we expect 470 million rubles of excise, and not 1 ruble goes to this budget, to our budget. So last year, in the Treasury of the Russian Federation, we produced I mean, including the foreign companies, Philip Morris, for instance, in the Russian jurisdiction, they produced 360 billion units of cigarettes, and they sold 712 in retail. Don't you think that that's the reserve? It means that a very high level of counterfeit or smuggling from abroad, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs confirmed that that's true, that that's the case. And the president said, that's good idea, and prepare your proposals. We'll identify the gray share to put it to give it over to the revenues of the Russian Federation. That's the role of the Council of Federation. We have made it up. The president has heard us, and we at our platform, well, we started to discuss with Larisa, and I even the text of the law that we already have written. We are discussing it now, but we have to first look up at as to what the basis should be. We should start our calculation from number of smokers or the number of the amount of retail sales. Some say that from the number of grown-up population. I think that it was very important to hear all the opinions. Thank you very much. I would like to say thank you. We are not finishing yet. No, I mean, I would like to say thank you to everybody who was actively participating in the discussion. And Larisa, I would ask our main panelists, maybe you would provide some very short comments to what was discussed, because Minfin will always be at the end. Dear colleagues, just one proposal that I articulated was not supported by the objectivity. It's the spending to implement the program measures and the differentiation among the entities. Whether don't you think that it's a problem? It is. Why are you then silent? Why are you not speaking up? Well, just understand, folks, that today the objective is to set a policy, first of all, budget policy for the coming future, with the account of all the factors which are determining to form and implement the budget. And if you think that this factor is secondary, okay, let's delete it, and you would use only your own reserves and loans that you would borrow from commercial banks, because that's your authority, and you should use the budget. Alexander Bogdanovich, I did not give the floor to your deputy, Vladimir, who is so active, and he is very active in all inter-budgetary relations discussions. He is standing foursquare for the interests of the region, as no one ever. And thank you very much that you sort of appreciated his work. Thank you. And the quality of his work was appreciated. But you could give us a bigger grant then. Then you should address the Minfin, because he didn't benefit anything from personally from this grant. Maxim? Well, I think that we really should wish for the degree of discussion. Well, it was quite high. But for our energy to really be spent not just to split the pie, because thus we will only lose the resources and the pie will shrink. And I think we should be more constructive in all those things and discussions. So, colleagues, those who are ready to really do it, then you're welcome. Let's allocate time, set up a meeting with your teams. With one of the regions, we already agreed to have one team along the chain of our decision-making for the people to learn, and we will give you over information systems and all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the advice. Please give us money. Larisa, colleagues, now let's give the floor to the Ministry of Finance finally. Microphone. I'm sorry, I think everybody would like to go home in time. Thank you very much for a really high degree, very high temperature of discussion. And Minfin was mentioned almost in every statement. Thank you very much that you supported the reserves to increase efficiency and are all in place. So Moscow, yes, of course, thank you very much, Moscow, to increase support, financial support to the entities. Maxim, thank you very much. The quality of finance management from the point of view of implementation by the entities of all, and Moscow was very kind to do it in its territory, and Minfin annually does the evaluations of the ratings, and we will reflect on including as one of the criteria, the desire and the implementation of the measures that are recommended. Very interesting proposal indeed. As for the closed subject of inventory of authorities and where to find it, well, my answer is very simple. Well, the financial authorities are aware of, because there were 3 times this question was asked last year, providing information. Well, happily, we have a working group in the Ministry of Finance with the head, well, maybe not everybody is represented, but 2 fin authorities from each entities, representatives of the Northwest. Please request them to share the information. Last October 25th, there was a government commission meeting on regional development where the members under Mr. Kozak, the governors, all were acquainted with all those methods of inventory and approaches. And now the information for all. End of last year, just last days of December, the Russian Federation adopted an amended methodology of distribution of leveling the nations with a special part related to calculation of performance and indicators of inventory, which is taken into account into the new distribution system. Arkhangelsk region got plus 31% of the nations. So thank you very much. Kostroma region. The fact that you invited us last year and everything was implemented as planned, and the working group of the Minfin and the heads of the Fin entities, Moscow and Belgorod regions, they were actively working with Kostroma regions to develop a program of healthy finance. So now it's important to implement it to the full. Maybe you should have started before, earlier. From the point of view of the numbers mentioned, would inform you that the growth of donations in Kostroma region plus 33%. So you have to clarify what the budget has for that. About the grants, to mention right away, indeed, the budget with the sum calculated and which is centralized from 1% of profit tax, 100 billion rubles were given for donations, and the rest was reserved to provide grants to the entities of Russian Federation. Just to mention, well, 20 billion. Last year it was only 5. Well, of course, it would be great to have 100 billion, but 20 billion is quite a significant increase of the previous sum. But the question of approach is, yes, it's in place. And when we reviewed it at the tripartite commission, so maybe we should do something different. And the agreement was that the Ministry of Economic Development, together with Minfin, will start reviewing the proposals to distribute the grants as soon as possible. And all those interested, please prepare your proposals and send it to the Mineco for us to be aware of your positions at an earlier stage. As for the agreement on leveling the nations, well, and indicators of economic bloc, yes, indeed, there are many questions from the entities where the indicators should be approved and how to submit them, and maybe some other indicators are needed. So, colleagues, since we have the Ministry of Economic Development, which is in charge of even the phrasing of those things, so please address the Ministry of Finance. If you have difficulties with all those titles and names in those agreements, to clarify, just go there. As for the Republic of Komi, small donation, maybe we don't need any conditions. You know the decree of the government with all the indicators, and before January 10th, you had the right not to reject this donation, not to fulfill all any conditions. Thank you. I think, well, you know, colleagues, we have so many fora underway. Well, Russian Investment Forum will be conducted in 6 weeks. In summer, Russian Economic Forum. But I think you would agree that in the framework of Gaidar Forum, we have the best discussions between representatives of the authorities and experts, because it's not business and power that meet, but experts and specialists and decision makers at the state level. So I think that our today's roundtable or expert discussion really allowed us not without developing some resolutions or adopting some decisions to find this dialogue, expert dialogue of professionals in the sphere of inter-budget relations. Thank you very much.